Welcome again. It's Angie Bono from the Alpine Shop, our certified pedorthist and senior bootfitter on staff. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what makes up the anatomy of a boot. Traditionally, most boots, hiking boots, were made with what's called a steel shank, and that is not a common practice anymore. I picked up a pair of boots from one of our swap sales for $5, and didn't really look like much to anybody else, but this is basically like a turn-of-the-century mountaineering boot, and it has a full steel shank in it, and it's completely and totally not bendable whatsoever. Most boots nowadays don't ever use any kind of steel shanks, so it's just heavy, outdated technology, and a lot of times they use more like a nylon midsole material to provide stability in a boot. Okay, so I have two boots here. They're basically very similar aesthetically. I have my good boot here, and I have a bad boot here. The bread and the butter, basically what makes a good hiking boot or a good backpacking boot a boot, is going to be the stiffness of it and the torsional rigidity. So a really good way to basically test that is to basically pick up your boot. Can you bend it in the toe? How much can you bend it? And then also torsional rigidity, which is going to be the side to side stiffness. So if I'm holding the boot here and here, kind of trying to go back and forth. What that basically is going to relate to is if you are out hiking and you basically step on a rock or a root or anything like that, and your boot does not have proper torsional rigidity, that boot is going to end up bending and your foot is going to basically end up rolling over. So looks can be deceiving. This boot here has a Vibram outsole on it, looks like a regular leather backpacking boot, but for that stiffness and that torsional rigidity we're really looking for, this boot has none of that. Torsional rigidity, you can totally move it side to side, and you can bend it pretty much in half. So this boot, where it looks like a backpacking boot, it is not going to be appropriate for backpacking whatsoever. So it's too flexible. If you stepped on a rock, root, anything like this, in a boot like this, the boot's going to roll and then you're going to end up turning your ankle. A good boot will be comprised of several different layers. On the very bottom you're going to have a good durable rubber. This one here is going to be made with Vibram rubber. The second layer you're going to have is basically going to be a polyurethane layer, which is kind of this gray layer outlined in through here. And this layer here is going to be a layer of cushion that's going to basically provide long-term cushion. It's not going to pack out like EVA. The layer that's above that is basically the layer that is providing the structural stability to that boot. And that's going to be a nylon midsole. So it is a firm piece of nylon that comes all the way down the whole entire shaft of the boot. And that is what's providing it with its torsional rigidity and that stiffness. The next layer we have is basically going to be a layer of cushion in through the heel and then also just here in the forefoot. The other thing that really makes a good boot very durable, proper for backpacking is going to be a substantial heel counter and a substantial toe counter. Heel counter is what's going to provide the stiffness in the back of the heel to kind of keep your heel from moving up and down in that boot or side to side. Most heel counters are made with thermal moldable plastic, so it is something that we can modify and say make the boot tighter in the heel. And a good toe counter in a boot up here is going to provide your foot with basically toe protection. So those are kind of a couple of things that make a good backpacking boot a good backpacking boot. I took our bad backpacking boot and cut it in half. Whereas it looks pretty similar, all leather uppers, Vibram outsole, we kind of saw considerable differences. In here we didn't really have that layer of polyurethane. It's really just kind of comprised of air pockets. Instead of a nylon midsole shank, it has a paper fiber board for its shank. And then kind of for torsional rigidity and side-to-side stiffness, we really have none of that. Another thing that makes up a really good backpacking boot is going to be the material that they use to basically make it waterproof. You can put waterproof on anything, but the question is it waterproof or breathable? So a lot of times to get a good waterproof boot, look for name brands like Gore-Tex, Event, Keen Dry, basically proprietary, waterproof, and breathable. And the main difference for that, this particular boot used Gore-Tex in it. That's our good boot. Our bad boot basically used a plastic waterproofing. So kind of the difference between that is foot's going to kind of be a big sweaty foot bath in this boot, and you'll have nice dry comfortable feet in this boot. kind of the main differences for that is that Gore-Tex here is going to be waterproof and breathable, whereas with like a plastic lining in the boot, it's just going to kind of get hot and sweaty. So again, I want to just thank you for spending a couple of moments with us to talk about what makes a good backpacking boot a good backpacking boot. Thanks and have a great day.